The next thing is proxying. A proxy. Proxy is very similar to a NAT and a gateway, and that's that it adds as a middleman. It usually connects to subnets to each other. Not necessarily. Sometimes what it does, it always can be used as a firewall. So it's very flexible in that sense. But it's a very high level protocol because it basically sits on the application level, on the presentation level. That's why we call it high level. So low level is actually more raw. Where your high level is, it's actually easier than your lower level stuff. You can even code your own proxy. It's actually not that much work. But coding your own gateway or NAT, it's a little bit more complex. So the proxy is actually a typical server. It sits and it listens on a certain port and it waits for connections. I'm not actually aware of UDP proxies, but yeah, I haven't actually used them. It probably is a couple available, but most of the time when you encounter a proxy, it is a HTTP proxy. HTTP runs on TCP/IP. So yeah, HTTP or FTP, or even POP and IMAP and SMTP. Those are also very popular proxy servers. But also they usually run on a specific port and a specific presentation. So they're not as versatile as a NAT that just use anything. You just send a packet and it knows what to do. This is it opens the entire packet, as I said. It's protocol specific, high level protocol like HTTP and FTP. Can also modify the data that's being sent. Sometimes what happens is if you request web pages, you'll actually go through a proxy. But then the proxy will actually add headers, which is part of this presentation data. It'll actually add extra headers to the request and change some of the headers that you sent, so that the person downstream can see that this request actually came through a proxy. What proxies can also do is they can cache content. It's also a very powerful mechanism. I'll just write this somewhere. So you can have, if you have a proxy server in a corporate environment, for instance, they use that a lot of times to save on internet bandwidth. Because a lot of people, when they log into, let's say, Google, they're all going to download exactly the same image. And you've got 1,000 people every morning downloading the same image. So what they do is they actually cache that image on the proxy server. So the next person that downloads that image, they're not going to actually go and request it from the internet. They're just going to give that person that image back that's stored on the PC. So you save a lot of internet bandwidth. So it's a similar principle with this, where you have an internet side and a private side. But now, if a request comes in, it sees that, oh, it doesn't actually have to send to that side because it already has the answer. So it just sends the answer back. So then you don't use bandwidth from the internet side. It saves a lot of overhead there. So yeah, a proxy server also has two separate sockets, similar to a NAT server. It's got one on the one side, one on the other side. If the request is not cached, it will actually open two different sockets. Usually sits between subnets. Here's a couple of apps that you can use. Apache can be set up as a proxy. IIS can be set up as a proxy. Squid is actually a proxy, and a proxy only. That can do multiple protocols. It can be FTP and HTTP and all sorts of other stuff. These two, as far as I know, can only do HTTP and Connect. Connect is a proxy used for HTTPS connections. Because the data inside the connection is encrypted, it can't actually modify it. So it's almost like a connection forward. You just say, oh, I want to connect to this server, and it connects to that, and then it sends the data back and forth. That's it. Okay. Then there's also a reverse proxy. Reverse proxy has got a fixed destination. So when you connect to the proxy server, it will always connect you. So if somebody connects to a certain proxy, that's a reverse proxy. It'll only connect you to a certain server on the other side, and that's it. You can't connect anything else. It's usually referred to as a reverse proxy. Whereas a dynamic proxy, which is the often used one, you actually tell this proxy server where you want to connect, and it will connect to wherever you want to connect. Okay, or you don't actually connect, you actually send your request. So it's not really packets you're sending, you more lodge a request and say you want this. And then the proxy server decides, is it just going to give you a cached file, is it actually going to request it, is going to modify the request and then send it. There's a lot of other stuff you can do. Okay, so that's a proxy server. Yeah, it basically covers proxy servers. Does everyone understand that? Okay, cool, awesome.